So, welcome to today's webinar run by Nexer, and the title of today's webinar is How to Work Data-Driven with Environmental Product Declarations, and in particular, the Environmental Product Declaration, EPD, and that's why we have Jana also to invite a guest from EPD International. Sebastiaan Stiller is with us today. Hi, Sebastiaan. And I will be moderating this session. My name is Anna Enarsson, and I work for Nexer Data Management as a marketing and communication manager. And I have the pleasure to present my colleague Jesper Leth today, that works as a data strategist for us, and he will be today's presenter. So let's kick off this webinar, and I'll give the word to you, Jesper, and we'll take questions in the chat. At the end, if there's time, we have planned half an hour in total, and we will go through some interesting topics or bullets, and including the partnership that we have with EPD International, but also our platform partner, Stebo Systems. We'll also speak about our role, Nexer, as a solution provider in this industry, because it's also an industry, data-driven sustainability, not only a way of working. And we will talk about the strategic perspective of working data-driven, and Jesper will also touch on the subject on how to, but there's no time to go into depth, of course, technical depth, so it will be more of a generic and general webinar this today. And finally, of course, what are the outcomes and outputs of working data-driven with environmental product footprint. So, Jesper.
Yeah, and thank you very much. It does double checking. Yes, I am not muted. So I'm really happy to be here and to be able to talk about this interesting topic that we are somehow all facing, and how we can make this an integral part of how we will collect data and use it in a business context. As Anna said, this is it's a conceptual overview of how we have stitched together the different bits and pieces. So please do not expect that there will be a lengthy system demo of how we've done all this. That will come in a later session. So, but what is important about all of this, about working with the data and in general about sustainability, it is that it's a really big topic, and evidence shows that, well, no one in no individual, no single business, no single government, no single NGO or such will be able to tackle this on its own. So we need to work as partners, and we need to be cross-sector focused, so we can harvest knowledge and experience from different people and different organizations. So this area that includes both the environmental, the social, and the governance related topics under this umbrella, yes, I said it's enormous, and we must work with it forward with conscious care and respect. So Nexer have a long-standing partnership with Stebo Systems, and we are partnering up with EPD International. And this last partnership have been ongoing for a little less than a year, and we've come a good way. And we've learned from this setup with EPD International that the setup that we have and the services that EPD International is offering, they go very well hand in hand and is complementing each other. So just a little recap, what is an EPD? An EPD is a document that is an output of a process, and it's the process that is important. The document is merely just a result of it. But this process that is running, collecting environmental performing data and getting the same data verified, and thereby make it available for others to consume. So this data is the intention, or as part of this process, to make sure that it is as transparent, objective, and comparable as it can ever be, and what is possible, which means that it has been verified by third-party experts that is working together with EPD International. And the EPD is an ISO declared document, but be mindful that it is not a label as such, as we would know it from other different types of label. It follows some other different guidelines. And the complementary service that we from Nexer are doing, it is tapping into the process between step 1, as we see here on screen, and onwards to step 3. So it is about this collecting the data, making sure that it is assessed a part of the life cycle assessment, the LCA, and what kind of or what set of product category rules that it will tap into. Then the EPD International, with its verifiers, will do the actual verification. And then once that have been approved and verified, the document will be available for others to download and consume and see the data. So this taps into the overall topic of this webinar, how to work data-driven with this process. And that applies for some different disciplines. But as stated earlier, working with sustainability and having the EPD as one of the many outputs that could become, then needs to be a dedicated effort within the business to work data-driven with sustainability. So we can tap into this strategy of addressing the data need for running a circular and a sustainable business, where it is about collaborating with the peers to enforce trust and transparency into the data that will go into the supply chain. And having such a data-driven approach is a key enabler for the reporting framework, as there is an ongoing shift in the market that will focus not only on the financial part of the reporting, but also other aspects of reporting. And one of the buzzwords right now is this double materiality, which means that companies need to understand their impact on their value chain from a sustainability perspective, and elevating that corresponding risk and opportunities, considering financial as well as non-financial aspects. And we see that there is an increased demand for getting access to verified data that have been through a conscious process within a company. So this sustainability data can be shared, and mainly in order to avoid greenwashing, but actually present the real picture as how a product is performing. And not only the product, but also the surrounding aspects as well, which will be supported. And in order to do this, well, we need to fuel this process, and data, as we would call it, data is the fuel for sustainable growth and to accomplish the sustainability goals that have been even more important, as it is an integral part and will become an integral part of the business goals. There's a recent report both from McKinsey and also Boston Group that says that CEO, they have sustainability or aspects of it as part of their top priorities for 2023. For instance, McKinsey is saying that they call it the net zero that remains the front and center of the CEO agenda. And again, being net zero is, well, then you need to know your figures before you can actually start to publish, but also before you can start to make different adjustments in your product assortment or in your product development process. And in order to do that, well, you need access to data. You need to make sure that it is not tied up in different silos. You need to make sure that it's integrated and available for those that wants to consume it. And it's not only within your own business, it could also be outside your business, between your customers, your vendors, or other stakeholders that may have a play in terms of how to collaborate, but also reuse this data in the context of their own reporting purposes. And this enormous amount of data, this enormous amount of needs to actually work with this, it needs to be in a scalable setup, because otherwise you will just swamp into a lot of manual work in order to overcome with this. And again, it's also mainly to adhere to different regulatory compliance needs that is also on scope out here. And in order to do that, then from the Nexer Data Management point of view, well, we clarify that all the knowledge that we have as data experts and working with the steeper step solution, then how about if we could turn our knowledge from the master data discipline approach and see how can we actually use our knowledge and bring it into the sustainability area. So having this overarching approach from master data management and the discipline for how to organize data, how to make sure that you know who can access it, which roles or which persons, stakeholders that would have permission to edit, to consume, and to work with the data. And we believe that any organization will benefit from having data clearly defined, making sure that it's accurate and curated to support the business in every corner. And this also applies to sustainability data. So the focus of working with the product footprint data, adhering to the master data management standard or principles, will allow a business to have a go-to system when it comes to working with this set of crucial, important information. And having a master data discipline approach will enable you to have this single source of the truth that will holding that one single record that serves as the foundation for other systems further down the supply chain. And the outcome that you can expect is that the data will be tied to this one record and thereby interlinked to others, and then apply the credibility and the comparability from this record and into the context where it might be used. And to make sure that it will be fast and it will be easy to access this record, then we're hindering some of the barriers that there might be in this area to make sure that the data can flow in a structured way. And touching about the comparable topic again, as we see in one of the bullets here again, that is one of the key takeaways to make sure that you can combine the data and you can integrate that into your processes that you will have in the business, because data from different sources and structures, they will somehow have an impact to the environmental performance data, not per se just to the actual performance of it, but to the structure of it. So how to make sure where it will be used. And with this, then you can elevate and extend the value of having a master data system that can be working close together with services like EPD International and producing environmental product declarations. And earlier we touched upon the value of partnerships, both in terms of research, but also experience. And the outcome of it will tell us that technology and data are the most significant areas that we need to tackle. And in order to do this, there's a process that has been lined up in terms of how the data can flow back and forth between the different stakeholders in this game. So mainly the ones that would go into this area would be manufacturers, somebody that will have a product that they need to build this data set so they can share it with others, where it would fit into their structure of how their data would work and how their products may be combined. So different companies, which could be manufacturing companies, would need to have this opportunity to collect and organize and prepare the environmental performance declaration data, and then being able to take it forward into a flow like we would see here on screen, which will enable them to start the process of actually creating the environmental product declaration. And in order to make this accessible, well, we need to store the information in the system where it can also be reused for other purposes than just this one in particular. But once it have come through the first internal rounds, well, you likely need some workflow controls or make sure that the right stakeholders will have a say in this process. But once that have been settled, then there's a task to reach out to EPD, and they can actually help to make sure that the data or this process will be pre-verified. So EPDs offer some services to run this pre-verification check, looking at the method being used, make sure that it's the right product category rule set that have been applied, and an overall kind of readiness assessment, not in terms of making sure that it gets verified, but mainly just to tackle to see what kind of typical questions or typical issues that would make an EPD kind of round trip a couple of times between the manufacturer and the verifier. Can they kind of all identify them early on? Because we know that the times or the amount of times it will have to go through this circle, it will just be loss of time. So they are offering this service that can be applied. And in order to make it easier accessible and easy to work with, well, we could then from our services with working with the environmental product declaration data, or in general the sustainability data, we can then push them into the services at EPD, and they will be able to access that very directly. Because as I said, the verification process, which will then start after the verification, that sits with the actual verifiers. That is a part of the wider network that EPD International have established. And this part of this process, it will likely involve a vast amount of different documentations, different calculations, different checks, different lookups in different databases or with universities and research and what have you. And once that have been completed, which in some cases can be only a few days, and in other cases where it's much more complex, it will likely take a bit longer. But having the data front and center will hopefully kickstart this process or make it a bit more smooth. And then in essential, the environmental product declaration will hold the sum of this data that will then be sent for the final verification. And then once it has been verified and everybody is happy with the result based on the method and the product category rules and the other LCA assessment data that will come out of it, then it will be defined as approved, and thereby also being able to make it publicly available. And then it will be available for publication and further download. And if we look at it from how we would see it as part of working with the STEP solution that Stibo system is providing, then we can, in the STEP solution, we can collect and work with the data, utilize different workflows, business rules, and what have you. And there's a whole kind of discipline and a number of different methods to apply. As an output of this process, we can then push it directly into EPD International, into their system, and then there's a process that will start, just as we saw before. And when that has been completed, well, then the information will be publicly available on the EPD portal, and the manufacturer that would own this have then collected the information and made it available for others to consume. And it could, for instance, be in a bill of materials structure. Here we've got some cement or concrete that is an ingredient to do building products, or it could be a zipper that is made of metal or plastic or whatever material that can be used into different kind of products, like a pair of jeans. And then the cement or the zipper is just different bits and pieces for how the wider performance of either the zipper or the pants or the cement or the building construction element, what is the footprint that each specific element would leave on that journey. If we look at the other side, how we could activate this verified data, then it would be downloadable into the STEP solution that we're working with. So we will query the EPD International system, we will be able to fetch the information, and it can be then linked to that level in your structure that you would feel that it would be appropriate for. So it could be a bill of material where it would link in. It could be raw material, it could be other things that could come in. It could also be a spare part, it could be a consumable that you would need as part of a kit that you would send forward to your customers. So in general, then as a data consumer, utilize this information and you can trust it because it has been externally verified by experts. And as I said, it can be used in different product compositions, and then you can work with the data that have been shared and sourced from, for instance, your suppliers or wherever you would buy this information. And if we try to bring it a bit in together, EPD is obviously the key part in this area, where there's a process and there's kind of a divider, you could say, because there's an upload process and there's also a download process. And on either side, the different processes could be activated to make sure that we can utilize this data in a good way. If we're flipping this picture just a bit and say that STEP will be the one that will then connect the data. So it's the same kind of information here, but just taking from a master data perspective, where in the middle again, the ability to utilize and collect and organize the data based on available data sets that is retrievable from the EPD portal. And then on the left side of this, if you are the one that will just consume the data and see how that works, that's one side of it. The other side would be when you would then create the data, so the use case will be slightly different, collect the data utilizing different workflows and procedures, and it could be also in the same system. And then you can connect the data and then push it forward into this process of actually seeing how it will come together. And it will fit directly into the processes that we saw in one of the previous slides with the 5 different steps that EPD International is providing. What I want to show with this one is that the different statuses that will come along, then we can source that back to the one that will create the EPD, so they will have a good insights into how far this EPD or the declaration have progressed in the flow, because there's also a kind of an end of time or an valid end date to this. So we can also use this to inform the ones that have been utilizing EPD data to say that, hey, now it's coming close to the end of life for this specific product declaration. You need to go and look for something else or see if there's an update or vice versa. So we can bring all this together. And in general, it's about collaboration and sharing data and being open to terms of how the data is coming forward. And all of this applied into a master data management discipline for how we can use the foundation and then connect the different systems. And in general, the overall purpose is that we can utilize this data in a publicly available EPD that is either human readable or machine readable, which is some of the services that EPD International is providing. And just to kind of all sum it up, what we offer from the Nexer Data Management is what we will call the footprint data management, which will be about how we can manage and maintain this environmental product data. That could be influenced for carbon dioxide, or it could be water, it could be landfill, it could be insemination, what have you in that area. And it will fuel down and support the ability to do compliance checks and to do different reporting. We touched about that earlier. It could also fuel the analytics in general, how you want to share this information forward, how you're performing, how are you in terms of your different goals, are you on track or are you below or ahead of your goals? And again, talked about this combine and integrate earlier on. So how can we make sure that this data will actually go back in the supply chain within the business? So it will be able to make a data-driven approach to do innovation and then to do a circular product development. And again, sharing with other systems, supply chain is in focus. And then also being able to see, well, if a product declaration is coming close to an end of life, how can we be informed so we can make sure that we are always up to par with the latest and greatest. So all, it's about data quality. It's about having it verified and trusted, so we can also avoid greenwashing. And then coming a bit to the end of it, so just to kind of go back into the helicopter, well, a declaration is never better than the data it holds. So how do we make sure that we can combine this data and work in a scalable and structured approach forward? And with this, then Anna, is there any questions we should take?
I'm here. There's no questions in the chat, but there might be some question marks. So if anybody has a question now, it's okay to bring it up or write it in the chat. And meantime, I might spend the last few minutes on you, Jesper, and Sebastiaan, asking from an attendee's perspective. What would you say is the biggest hinder or impediment for companies to work this way today, and why haven't they started? It's kind of time, right? because there are already legislations and regulations, and we only have one planet and all that. I mean, the why is established long time ago, and we have a ongoing crisis. And now we know as solution providers that there is tech to help us. But what would you say is the biggest hinder? Sebastiaan, first for you, what would you say from your perspective, coming from the EPD, and I would say representing the regulators in this webinar? What would you say is the largest hinder?
Well, I would say, thank you very much for the question, Anna, but I'm not a regulator.
No, that's what I felt. I was like, no, now I'm saying something wrong here. But I mean, representing that kind of stakeholder,
yes.
not the solution provider in the sense of a technology partner. That's what I meant.
Yes. No, I think there's a shift. There's a shift going on right now in how we do LCA, how we do deliver data, and it's clear that the regulator and actually any kind of actor in the market currently understands that we need to mainstream and also streamline LCA. So this is not about, I would say, doing the way we used to do it, but it's bringing technology, IT solutions into the LCA domain. And I think this is an important step for also manufacturers to actually do LCA cost effectively, not only for EPD, but also for eco-design purposes, etc., etc. I mean, in the end, you will be forced to report either voluntarily or mandatorily when we think about regulation coming into place, like the CPR or the eco-design sustainable products regulation, where companies will be forced to provide data once they go out with an environmental claim on any kind of product in the future.
And do you agree, Jesper? I mean, we've just heard you talking about this, so we kind of know your perspective, but that we didn't go into the challenges that a specific or singular organization had. But if we ask ourselves that question, and as a strategist and also in a dialogue with several customers talking about data management challenges every day, that's what we do, you and I, daily basis. What would you say, to summarize, is the largest bump or hinder or impediment, and what would you say advise companies listening in today or that seeing this recording maybe even to do as a next step if you want to start working more data driven and use these kind of master data discipline and tech to start minimizing their footprint on Earth?
There's two things that I would like to bring forward. One of them is that seen from a sustainability point of view, those working in a sustainability department, they have understood the urgency of actually wanting to do something. And now then they are taking the torch and say, hey, we want to go and do something good. And they are just running fast as hell, pardon my French here. But it also means that now and then they have blinders on them, so they're not looking where they would actually been able to benefit from some of the good work that is already ongoing in the business. So they are missing some opportunities, because there in any company there is a lot of data, but how can they activate this data? How can that set of data help them to come forward? So they are running it very fast with blinders on. That's one element. The other part is that those working with data, they are strong on the data area, but may not actually know how they can bridge it into how that data can support the sustainability strategy. And now then I wouldn't say they're one place safe, but they say that, hey, this is my domain of expertise and knowledge. I want to do something, but I don't know really how, and I've got other priorities on my agenda. So one of the barriers is to make sure that those two set of people in an organization is actually talking together and see how they can collaborate internally. And I've been in a number of different customer-facing meetings where kind of our push into their organization were the first time that these two set of people were coming together in the same room. And that was really fruitful, but also a bit of kind of a learning point, saying, why didn't we bring those people together earlier?
So that's wrapping it up today. It's 13:32, and if you have more questions, ideas, because sometimes that comes a bit, afterwards, you want to get hold of Jesper, me, Sebastiaan, EPD International, or Nexer, talking about this, bringing something up, suggestions of maybe a new webinar, follow-up webinar that you want to collaborate with us on, or any other requests. Here is our contact information on this last slide. But of course, you can also go to nexergroup.com and read more about data-driven sustainability and footprint data management, or you can go to EPD International's website and read